Susan! Chris's voice rang with tension, and irritation was red in his eyes. How are you not aware of the obvious? Why do you refuse to listen to me? The girl looked at her childhood friend with a hard look. What does he allow himself? He literally tramples with his dirty boots in her Garden of Eden. Chris and Susan have been friends since childhood, more precisely from their school years. When they both arrived in first grade, the teacher took care of their seating arrangements. Then, it was customary to sit the girl next to the boy. There were not enough boys for the whole class because there were twice as many girls. But Susan Maxwell was lucky enough to sit next to Chris Adams. First graders were seated on the third deck from the edge, and they sat together until graduation. Chris was a cheerful, dark-haired boy with thoughtful gray eyes. From childhood, he loved books and military equipment. He was well-read and purposeful. Susan wore 2 huge bows in her blonde hair. She laughed loudly and could charm both adults and her classmates with a sincere smile. So Chris couldn't resist her charms. In high school, Chris was drawn to the society of guys, and Susan to girls' fun. Susan has grown into the first beauty of the school. At discos, a line of people who wanted to invite her to dance lined up for her. Chris also enjoyed the attention of the girls, for which Susan constantly teased him. She teased him because she was jealous of her serious friend, although the proud girl would never admit it. At some point, she decided that she didn't want to spoil their friendship with the relationship. She changed guys like gloves, but not Chris. Chris remained her best friend, like a knight next to a princess. He always rescued her, helped her, supported her, protected her from offenders. The girl tried to be as wonderful a friend to the guy as he was to her. She trusted him with everything. And now, friends were 23 years old. They both received higher education. Chris graduated from the Naval College, but remained to serve in his hometown, fortunately for Susan. Susan chose the path of a public relations specialist. The spectacular blonde has been working as a PR specialist for a year, gaining experience in a well-known gaming company. At the same time, the girl dreamed of founding her own advertising agency in order to promote the company. A lively and purposeful PR manager was going to gather a team of experts from various fields under her wing and was already working on this project. Today, on a hot summer day, Chris and Susan met at their favorite cafe. There was a cozy atmosphere and a rich selection of coffee drinks, and vinyl records hung on the walls. The girl invited her friend to tell him important news. She is getting married. Ahmed proposed to her, and she was very happy with the anticipation of a new life in Turkey, in a luxurious mansion among the seas and sandy beaches. But Chris didn't share her happiness, overreacting. Now she looked thoughtfully at the beautiful profile of her friend, who now frowned and stared stubbornly out the window of the coffee shop, blushing with indignation. But he was infinitely sweet to her, even so harmful and evil. Susan thought sadly, I'm going to have to end my relationship with Chris. And not because of the distance. Her groom, Ahmed, is very jealous. He pointed out many times that such a close relationship between his fiancée and another man was unacceptable. The girl was pleased that he was jealous. However, she sincerely loved Chris as a kind and close friend. Therefore, even the thought of parting with him was bitter and tormented her heart. Although it will be easier for her to survive parting with him if he doesn't stop swearing. But the guy couldn't come to terms with the choice of a girlfriend. The guy continued, turning his face to the girl. Your groom is using you. He needs a doll as a slave. He will bring you there as a souvenir from a distant land. And he will show you to relatives and friends. A rare kind of person, a natural blonde. The girl smiled, shaking her head. But the guy didn't think to stop, cursing more and more and predicting Susan's future life. Chris nervously stirred the sugar in the cup, categorically describing the fate of the Turk's bride. He will put a paranja on you, make you cook dolma from morning to night, periodically interrupting to give birth to children. And if you have a son, you will not see him. By the way, you can forget about your career and the creation of your own company because he will not support you. You will receive the status of wife, which means you will stay at home. Please listen to me. I tell you all this as a best friend. Have I ever lied to you? The blonde couldn't stand it, putting the cup on the saucer with a clang. You know what? If you were my best friend, you would rejoice in my happiness. And you were just talking nasty things to me. I'm telling the truth. Sometimes it can be very bitter. The girl waved her hand dismissively. You think in stereotypes and are biased towards Ahmed. The traditions you speak of are gone. Ahmed and his family are progressive people. The guy objected. You don't want to take off your rose-colored glasses. Turkey continues to be a patriarchal country despite its progressiveness. Their love for tradition has not gone away. You will become a housewife and a slave. And I'm sure you won't be his last wife. Susan was sincerely indignant. There's no polygamy in Turkey. Officially no, and officially yes, and you may not know about other wives. The girl tensed, furrowing her perfect brows. What do you mean by that? Chris willingly explained. I want to say that Turkey is an Eastern country in which Muslim traditions are still alive. It looks like he obviously thought a lot about Ahmed and his life. Susan, a Muslim can have up to 4 wives. Other women will not be official wives, but concubines or mistresses of your Ahmed. The occasional cafe patrons looked in their direction, puzzled. Susan's lips trembled slightly. Resentment at a friend covered the girl with her head. Why is he doing this? Can't he just be happy for his girlfriend? But he ruined everything. The guy was confused. Susan, why are you upset? Chris was instantly despondent, noticing that his friend's blue eyes filled with tears. All his stock of anger was gone, and his expression changed to one of timidity and concern. Chris was instantly there, sitting on the couch next to the girl. He grabbed her by the shoulders, pulling her towards him. The girl buried her face into the guy's chest, sobbing. Chris tightly pressed the girl to him. Susan heard his heart beating frantically in his chest, as if it was about to jump out of there. He said softly, Susan, I'm worried about you. If you leave, I won't protect you there. You understand me? The girl muttered into her friend's t-shirt. Maybe it's time for me to start taking care of myself. But the guy didn't answer her. That evening, Chris didn't offer to walk Susan home or take her out a little longer, contrary to the usual tradition. He referred to some important matters. Susan smiled and nodded knowingly, but she knew Chris too well. He lied. The girl looked after the departing friend for a long time, until he disappeared into the crowd of passers-by. Chris didn't look back. His heart ached in his chest. However, Susan straightened her hair, forcing herself to smile. She scolded herself mentally. Why are you sad? You're the bride. Rejoice in it. The girl's phone rang, and the screen flashed. Kirsten, tutor. The girl said into the phone. Hello. Good evening, Kirsten. The woman said in a business-like voice. Hi, Susan. I remind you of the first lesson. Today at 8 o'clock. Is everything okay? The girl confirmed. Yes, of course. I'm already leaving for you. Susan hailed a taxi and gave the address to where Kirsten lived. The woman taught Turkish. When Susan called her last week, the tutor promised her that she could teach her satisfactorily, or even speak Turkish well, in no time. The idea to learn Turkish came spontaneously. The girl was watching some series with subtitles in Turkish, and she liked various beautiful and melodic words. And then she came up with a plan. She will secretly learn her groom's native language and be sure to surprise him at the wedding. What a surprise it will be when she starts to say a beautiful speech during the wedding in his native language. 2 months remained before the important event. Therefore, Susan planned to activate all the internal reserves and learn all the mysteries of a foreign language. While the taxi was taking her to the other side of the city, Susan looked out the window at cars, people, road signs rushing by, but she didn't really see it all. The girl's thoughts carried her far into the memories of her personal Eastern tale. Ahmed conquered Susan, no matter how angry and sarcastic Chris was. She met a foreigner in the place where all the progressive people of mankind are, on the internet, on a dating website for foreigners. She checked in as a joke. But everything turned into marriage and moving to another country. Yes, she's lucky. When Ahmed wrote to Susan, she didn't take him seriously. She just started talking to a foreigner. But an interesting, charming, and incredibly handsome Turk quickly charmed her with his speeches. He told her that he loved their country, and then he started saying that he loved Susan. He called her, my soul. My honey, my angel." She melted away from the compliments and looked at the photos in his profile for a long time, admiring the beauty of the Eastern man. Ahmed in the photos was driving luxury foreign cars, having fun with his friends in a luxurious club, and relaxing in a hotel. He had an incredible house with a gorgeous garden around. And all this life he offered to Susan because he fell in love. The girl couldn't believe her luck. However, she doubted to the last whether all these promises would remain empty, because he was so far away. However, the man began to care for the girl even at a distance. The courier often brought her bouquets of flowers and gifts. He sent her halva and other sweets by the kilo. A month ago, Ahmed texted her, "I sent you a present. Wait for the courier." But Ahmed himself appeared on the threshold of Susan's apartment instead of a courier. He stood with a bouquet of scarlet roses and smiled at Susan. A tall and swarthy man with black hair and eyes like hot coals. He was an actor from the TV series that Susan loved so much. He declared immediately, without greetings and superfluous words, "Susan, marry me. I love you more than my life." And everything swirled around. The girl was looking forward to the change and soared in seventh heaven with happiness. They decided to have a wedding in 3 months in Turkey. Ahmed told her for a long time about how wonderful their future life would be, in luxury, in prosperity, in love. He promised her the sky and diamonds. The man decided to stay with Susan until the move. The girl has an apartment in the capital, a gift from her parents. There was enough room for both. She showed the groom the capital. They walked together for a long time and counted the days until the wedding. The holiday was promised by the husband's parents. Relatives often called Ahmed, but the girl couldn't talk to them. She didn't know the language of the groom. She could only smile awkwardly, listening to how the Turk communicates for a long time with his mother, father, and brothers. Ahmed's conversation with his family could last for hours, and the girl liked it. A family man is a great happiness. So he will also appreciate his wife and children. She knew Spanish and German well. Perhaps this is what helped the girl to quickly master a third foreign language, adding knowledge of Turkish to the collection. Kirsten turned out to be an excellent teacher, in a simple way conveying the intricacies of a foreign language to an attentive and diligent female student. Also, the Turkish films that the female tutor advised her helped her a lot. As a result, after a little more than a month, Susan could already be proud of herself. She didn't speak perfectly, but she understood well when others spoke to her. She lacked live practice, but the opportunity to understand someone else's speech presented itself to her very soon. The future spouse once again called to relatives in a distant country. The girl tried to hold back a sly smile and began to listen. She sat on the couch nearby, pretending to be engrossed in the film. She wonders if she'll understand his words. However, what she heard shocked her to the core. Unfortunately, not in a good way. It turned out that he communicated with his brother, and at the same time, the foreigner shared with him about what future awaits him with his new wife. "I'll take her to us, and we'll sell her apartment. Then we can partially repay my debts. Of course, we don't have enough money. You know what problems our family has? By the way, how is our store? Are we out of options? We'll have to sell it, and we'll get out somehow." Then the man told the truth, which was absolutely terrible for the girl. "How is my Milem? Is she really worried?" "No, she doesn't know about Milem. This is considered cheating here. We will formally marry and I will introduce Milem to her as my second wife. But I will have the first foreign wife. This is an honor for her. Let her enjoy it." The girl's mouth was dry and the smile fell from her face. She must have misheard. And the man continued, "Of course she's acting terribly. Shame and shamelessness." And Susan, out of the corner of her eye, noticed that he was examining her dress, the skirt of which was a palm above the knee. He continued, "Here, everyone walks the streets like that. It's nice to watch, but I won't let my wife do that. The only thing she can wear is a hijab." He paused, listening to the interlocutor, and then nodded, "I will re-educate her. She will become silk. She won't raise her eyes from the floor without my permission. Okay, stop talking about her. You better tell me what's with the money." As a result of a long conversation, she realized that all the photos she saw were a bluff. She didn't know who owned the cars in the house. But the owner was definitely not the Turk sitting in front of her. Ahmed was poor. His family had many debts and loans, and he got into debt to come to another country, throwing dust in the girl's eyes. The girl didn't immediately fall into hysterics. She tried to calm down. Susan ended up walking around sad for 2 days, but she waited for Ahmed's second conversation, this time with his mother. But this dialogue angered her more than the previous one. Susan was washing dishes at the time. The plate slipped from her weakened hands, smashing a couple of cups in the sink with a crash. The man said into the phone, wincing, "Damn, she broke something." "Mom, she's a normal housewife. She's still young. She will do anything. You will teach her. Don't be afraid. I'll teach her whom she will serve. Of course to you." "Yes, Mom, we will live according to Islam." Of course, Susan had heard before that a mother was extremely important to a Turkish man. He listens to her and follows her advice implicitly. But now she realized how much her groom is committed to this rule. She realized that she would not have her own opinion in his house. Chris was right about everything. Susan smiled very tenderly at her unscrupulous groom that evening. He answered her with the same smile and said, "My love, I spoke with my mother. She's looking forward to our wedding and your meeting." The girl answered him in Turkish, "Go to your mother and second wife and live with them, and get out of debt yourself, my dear." The girl was categorical and adamant, no matter how the dumbfounded Ahmed tried to justify himself, no matter how he kissed Susan's hands. She shouted in Turkish, throwing his things into the stairwell. "And by the way, I don't like halva, and I don't love you." An hour later, she was crying on the shoulder of her best friend who came to her on the first call. "Chris, I'm a fool, a naive blonde." The girl cried, rubbing tears and the remnants of mascara on her cheeks. "Why didn't I believe you right away? I wanted an easy and beautiful life. I'm an idiot. I thought that he would carry me in his arms, love me, like in the movies." Chris was silent. He just stroked the girl on the back, looking thoughtfully ahead of him. He suddenly said, "Do you know that they wanted to send me to serve in Alaska?" The girl nodded, not understanding what he was getting at. "I then wrote a refusal and asked to stay here. I wanted to be closer to you." She took a deep breath. She didn't know that Chris stayed because of her. And the guy continued, "And when you did start packing your bags, in general, I was recently offered a place in Alaska, and I signed the consent papers." The news sent a chill through Susan, sending goosebumps down her back and up her arms. Susan muttered, "Are you leaving now?" The girl couldn't blame him. It was right and fair. She wanted to arrange her life, and Chris must go his own way. But it didn't make her feel better to understand this. The guy nodded decisively. "I'll go there." And then he looked her straight in the eyes. "Will you come with me?" Susan blinked, uncomprehending. "What?" "Come with me, Susan." "How can I go with you? After all, only wives can go there." "Yes, then marry me. I've been in love with you since first grade, when I saw your braids with bows." He gently touched the girl's head, running through her hair. Confused, Susan tried to justify herself. "I thought you didn't feel anything for me. And I was afraid to hear a refusal from you. I was cowardly. I wanted to stay by your side, if only as a friend. And now I don't want to be your friend. I love you, Susan. Stop torturing me and be my wife." 10 years have passed since that day. Susan lifted her head from the laptop she was working on outside and looked around the playground. 2 boys hid behind the children's house, holding up their toy guns and pretending to be spies. The woman called the secret agents. "Andrew, Steve, let's go home. Dad will be here soon." The brothers immediately stopped their fun, obediently running up to their mother. She looked lovingly at her sons. Both children looked very much like Chris. All friends and relatives of the family noticed it. The girl sometimes grumbled that she gave birth and the children looked like their dad, but secretly, she was very proud of it. 10 years with Chris flew by in a flash. The guy seemed to have accumulated love in himself since childhood and splashed it out on his wife. He turned her life into a fairy tale, and she reciprocated. Who would have known that best friends can become a couple? So beautiful, sensual, and understanding each other's spouses from a half word. The husband supported Susan in everything. As a result, she was able to start her own business. Susan collaborated with colleagues, oversaw projects, and enjoyed her activities in life as a wife and mother. Of course, the girl didn't get to a warm country, to palm trees and the sun, but she left for the northern state, to snow and cold. But who would have known that it would be 100 times warmer here? Because true love lived here.